Right, let's go to that story now. Ahead of Youth Day, Higher Education Minister Nzimande released the results of a study on the impact of COVID-19 on youth and students in the post-school education sector. The study found that the prolonged periods of closure and restrictions on movement may have led to additional emotional unrest and anxiety. Some of the main challenges reported by students during lockdown was loss of study time, not having enough money for food and essential items, and loss of social contact. Human Sciences Research Council Dr. Sibusiso Sifunda discusses this report with us now. Thank you very much, sir, for your time. Now, I assume, of course, just like a lot of people in different sectors, a lot of the anxiety that we see coming out of this report was caused by not being able to afford things and basically finances being more stressful during lockdown. All right, we seem to have lost Dr. Sifunda, but we will try and get back to him soon so that you see the results of that report by the Higher Education Minister, Nzimande. Let's take you to a short break. Coming up after that, the South African Municipal Workers Union says it will strike if it's unhappy with the wage proposal. Stay tuned.
Bullying can ruin lives that are often ruined by abuse of the vulnerable, abuse perpetrated in many ways. Physical bullying is about exerting power and control through violence. Verbal and emotional bullying is when relentless insults are used to belittle and manipulate. Cyberbullying occurs in the online and social media spaces, and prejudicial bullying targets identities and appearances. But how can those being bullied stop the cycle of abuse? It's crucial for you to speak to someone you trust to gain support. Stay in areas where you have lots of other people so that you can't be isolated. And when you walk home, change your route often. Be careful who you give your contact details to, whether it's your phone number or email address. And if you see someone else being bullied, tell someone about it. Perhaps you are a bully who wants to stop hurting others. Speak to someone you trust who won't be judgmental. You can also get help at Childline South Africa on 0800 055 555 or email info@childwelfaresa.org.za.
Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. Let's take you back to this now. Ahead of Youth Day, Higher Education Minister Nzimande released the results of a study on the impact of COVID-19 on youth and students in the post-school education sector. The study found the prolonged periods of closure and restriction on movement may have led to additional emotional unrest and anxiety. Some of the main challenges reported by students during lockdown was loss of study time, not having enough money for food and essential items, and loss of social contact. Human Science Research Council Dr. Sibusiso Sifunda discusses that report with us now, and he joins us live virtually. Thank you, sir, for your time. Now, explain to us, Doc, obviously we'd be correct in assuming that a lot of financial stress came about for students during this period.
Yes, thank you for having me. That is correct. Actually, financial stress came up as one of the key findings from our study, as well as issues with food shortages, where almost half of the students actually reported having some form of food shortage during the lockdown.
Now, Doc, there's also the question of how students had to obviously move back home, especially during level 5, 4, and even 3, when schooling was not allowed at universities and any other level of education. Now, a lot of them had to then move back home. Some of them are from rural areas where there is no access to internet and things like that. Did they discuss anything with the researchers about getting support from their institutions with regards to learning from home?
Yeah, we did cover that area, and actually, if you look at the results, you see the differences between institutions, because we're looking at universities, TVES colleges, and the universities of technology. So some institutions actually did better than others in terms of providing support during the lockdown. In fact, you find some students reporting that institutions even helped them with providing funds to go back home. And others report that institutions were providing free data during the lockdown to allow them to learn remotely.
And did they discuss anything about their health and well-being? For instance, probably mental health issues, them developing mental health issues such as anxiety, or those who are already suffering from mental health issues, those issues being even more higher or highlighted in their lives?
Yes, mental health was covered as one of the themes that we explored. And if you look at the data, there was actually very high levels of anxiety and mental distress amongst the respondents. And if you unpack the data further, you actually find out that those who were younger, particularly at the age of 18 to 19, reported higher levels of mental distress than older students. And actually, it's clear that these were mostly first-year students who found themselves basically having to leave campuses within 2 months of starting their university career. And so they were really not sure what was happening and what the future held. And so their stress levels were higher than those who probably had been at university for longer before the pandemic.
Did that impact probably see, universities record more failures in the first year or even any other year? Did you see more dropouts possibly in the year 2020 because of lockdown?
Well, our data didn't get that far into looking into basically the issue of dropouts, but we did ask the issue of whether people were anxious about not finishing or not doing well in the year, or also having their graduations have to be shifted. That was also one of the things that was reported to be causing anxiety, because there was just uncertainty of really what was going to happen. And in terms of basically going back to campus or being able to finish on time on your studies.
Was there anything found with regards to gender-based violence, according to your research?
Yeah, the study explored the issue of gender-based violence, and as one of the issues, what we found that there was some level of gender-based violence, but if you look at the numbers, it's sort of similar to what you find in the general population. But what we found that was different when it comes to students is that when we asked if gender-based violence has increased during the lockdown compared to before, they reported not to be any difference in terms of because of the lockdown, whether it increased when compared to before the lockdown.
My very last question to you, Doc, were there any recommendations made at all with regards to this? I mean, we're in the third wave. We're hearing talks of stricter regulations or a stricter lockdown level. So any recommendations from your research?
I think our recommendation is really to get campuses to really adhere to the regulations around living with COVID. As things are right now, we really are coexisting with COVID. As to when it will end, nobody knows. And so basically we really look at issues of adhering to COVID regulations and reducing the number of infections on campuses. But it's also just to look at the issues of improving the resources for learning remotely, because if you look at it now, the hybrid learning model is pretty much the future of how we're going to learn. I don't think we'll probably ever go back to full, face-to-face learning 100% like things used to be.
All right, Dr. Sibusiso Sifunda, he's from the Human Science Research Council. Thank you very much for your time, sir.